Hey, hi, hello, how are you? My name is Callie, resident SSR man that's just here to play games, and for some fucking reason, my throat hurts a little bit. But I have tea and I have water. And I think it might just be like a drainage thing, so we'll see. We'll see. Yeah. I think we are on the last day for what we were doing for this run through at least, and we need to present things to the fucking whatever he's called. But yeah, let's go. I haven't decided what I'm gonna do, honestly. Hello, Andreas. Morning, I hope the day is treating you well. Well enough, though there's much to do and not enough hours to do it all. The storm made such a mess of the town, and there's the leaks in the roof at home, then there's all that wool. Lord. Are the ewes so near to lambing already? You noticed? Yes, they're just about due, so we sheared them last week. What a trial that was. I must have spent ages washing it all. Have you ever smelled wet, dirty wool? Ugh, there's nothing worse. Now that it's clean, we've got to spin it, and that takes an age all on its own. Lord, I don't know where I'll find the time. Do you need any extra hand? I'm always keen to learn a new craft. We may, but I'm afraid the permission isn't mine to give. Clara, Hetty, Veronica, Kat, even little Ursula will be there, though she makes mischief more than she helps. At least the work goes quickly with the women working together. Lively conversation helps pass the time. Sometimes we even get visitors. What kind of visitors? Sometimes the men in town will come by to say hello. Peter, George, perhaps even Otto. Given Otto's age and the status of the other women in town, he must be there to see you or Veronica. Probably you. Or probably you. Maybe so. Who's to say? He's a perfect gentleman, perhaps too much of fun, but I shouldn't be telling you that. It's nice. I enjoy spending time with him. He's quite a bit older than you, isn't he? Though I suppose that's not unusual. He's not so old, and he works hard, cares for his father, and he's rather handsome. Clara would have a fit if she heard me talking to you about him. Oh, and you should visit while we're spinning, Andreas. Johann Bauer will be there to keep an eye on us. As long as you stay outside, I can't see what a harm you visiting would cause. I'd like to try my hand at spinning. Nothing would make Hetty happier. She's quite the taskmaster. We meet at Johann Bauer's home. Come by in the morning or afternoon and speak to Johann. I should get back to work. It was a pleasure running into you, Andreas. Be well, Ava. Sick. Andreas. Oh. Hey, Andreas. You say hello to the girls today? Ava and Clara? No, I mean the chickens. Peter, James, and John. They like it when you stroke their back or give them a good scratch under the breast. You named your chickens after the apostles? Isn't that blasphemy? I guess when you put it plain like that. But I hear about the apostles every Sunday in Mass. They witnessed Jesus' greatest moments of glory and his darkest trials. I was thinking, that's how it is with the girls and me. They see everything I deal with around here. Word of advice, don't mention that to anyone else, especially a father. It's fine. I get it. I'll just call them the girls from now on. I don't recall your family eating eggs. What do you do with all of them? Oh, we sell them to the Bowers. Clara says we need the extra money for taxes. Anyway, I should get back to it. Until later, Andreas. Until then. Okay. Fair. Andres is oh me. Hello, Andreas. Church and Druckers. We go. Klaus. Thomas. God be with you, Andres. Yeah, yeah. Meow. Ew. Child's drawings. I wonder who the artist is. Collapse must have allowed access to the aqueduct. Okay. I don't really want to talk to Linhart. Hey, Paul. Hello. Paul, right? I don't think we've talked before. I'm Andreas. I'm staying with the Gartners. Oh, but you're not a farmer. Why are you living with the farmers? They're letting me board with them while I work in the Abbey's scriptorium. You're a monk? I'm an artist. Oh, like you do drawings? Drawing, painting, calligraphy. If it goes in a book, I can put it there. Oh, is that... How do you get money? I help the abbot with the scriptorium's commissions. Art is a job, just like being a miller is a job, but it's also a calling. People need beauty as much as they need bread. I didn't... My dad said... My dad says drawing's stupid. It's not worth anything. Dad's wrong. Oh! Not when you can hear! Sorry. Do you like to draw, Paul? Oh, the very emphatic yes. Cute. More than anything, but I have to do it where Dad can't see. He gets mad. I'm sorry to hear that. But if it means a lot to you, maybe he doesn't need to know. Can I tell you a secret? Oh, I got an achievement. Good influence. Encourage Paul to draw. Nothing on this earth would please me more, young Master Mueller. Sometimes I draw in the ruins, in the meadow, where Dad can't see. The Romans would have been honored. They love defacing monuments. Real. Oh, my tea's very hot. What do you draw? Cats? Mom? I don't know. Stuff. I probably shouldn't be talking to you. Dad won't like it. You're probably right. I'll go. Until later, Paul. And hey, keep drawing, alright? I will. Bye. Pet. Pet Staub. Take my Discord off of Do Not Disturb for 2 seconds. I start getting overlay notification. Don't give me overlay notification. So, anyway. Let's go to the outer farms. Fuck it. Sup, homies? Carl, Helena. Okay. Let's go back. I want to see if I get a different voice or line. These must be Paul's drawings. Cute. Anyway, I don't want to talk to Linhart. Fucking freak. Hey, Till. Hello, Master Mailer. What's up? Can I go into this fucker's house? No, he's locked. Damn. Okay, I need to not say anything about Margaret? Is it Margaret? Oh, I don't remember if it was Margaret. Into the church we go. Old Bailey. What's happening in here? Nothing. Okay, sick. Let's talk to Guy in his insufferable ass. Never mind. He doesn't want to talk. Fair enough. Oh, I think I've gotten everything from here. Yeah. Okay. I wish I could dig it up myself. Bleh. Okay. I'm gonna play this on my own as well. There we go. I can actually hear stuff. I'm gonna play this on my own as well, and try and get all the achievements, so let's see what happens. I'm probably gonna use a guide, TBH, because I don't care. I don't care about not using a guide, you know? I just want to know what happens and see everything. About. Andres, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry about what is happening to Brother Piero. I do not know him well, but I find it hard to believe he could have killed the Baron. Do you have any idea who might have done it? Did you see anything? Sadly, no. Most mornings I spend my time reading in the courtyard, but the rain made that impossible. And although the brothers are friendly, I do not know them well enough to speculate. I'm sorry. If it would help keep your spirits up, I would like to offer to eat with you. Well, you and some of the townsfolk. I have become acquainted with the Albin family, but do not feel comfortable making this offer myself. If you could approach them on my behalf, I would appreciate it. The Gospel says that man cannot live on bread alone, but from time to time, a little bread is required. I need to continue looking into Baron's murder, perhaps later. Of course, I understand. God give you health. Until later. Maybe I should get Otto to help me dig up the box against the wishes. Hey, Florian. Okay. I could just... There we go. Have to remember the button. Jornel. Two innocents. Kirsty and Agnes's daughter. Consider McClose. Chapter House at Nons. What time is it? It's prime, okay. Oh, so they're probably in there. Okay. I think I need to go talk to Agnes, maybe. If I can find her. Hello, Schlau. Oh, Andreas. Okay, so... She doesn't have anything to say to us. Ooh, he's gonna get pissed. Andreas. Make it quick. Oh, he's gonna fucking hate us after we do this. Oh, he's gonna fucking beat us to death. I wanted to ask you about the grave of two innocents in the forest. I saw you leave flowers there. Who were they for? That's not your business. I won't talk to you about this, Andreas. Don't ask me again. I found the note you left in the forest. Not getting anywhere with him. If his wife Agnes can tell me more. Perhaps another time. Okay, so I just needed to talk to him. Hey, Agnes. Good day, Andreas. Good day, Agnes. Was there something you needed? You're lingering. I was hoping to talk to you about the grave in the forest. I tried to speak with Lucky about it, but he refused. Ah, yes, that does sound like my husband. I know it's not my business, but visiting a secret grave in the woods is unusual. Should we not pray for the souls of the dead, Andreas? The dead are usually buried in the churchyard, who had to be buried at the salt mine. Oh, fuck yes, I finally got... River Helena's Hell showed interest in Pfeiffer, said Tassin was lucky to have... Bitch. It's the grave of our first daughter, Beate. She had an affair with Baron Rothvogel and fell pregnant. The Baron took no responsibility for his part. Beate was crushed. Couldn't she have married one of the men in town? Yes, that's what we told her, that there was nothing to worry about. It's not that uncommon, even a small town like ours. How did she come to know Baron Rothvogel? The Baron met Beate on one of his visits to town. He took a liking to her. Was she very beautiful to have drawn the Baron's eye? She was my daughter, Andreas. Of course she was beautiful to me. He made her many promises. Promises he had no way to keep, no intention of keeping. Beate was no child, but she had little experience with men and the things they'll say to get their way. When she'd missed 2 cycles, she came to me. We'd already been through this with her sister. Was this before or after Brigitte had married Martin? Before. Strange thing, since Brigitte is younger. Was younger. Both our girls had wound up in trouble, but Beate knew we wouldn't be angry. Lucky's a gruff man, but he loved both our daughters, no matter what happened. Did she take her own life? If she'd died in childbirth, she would have been buried in the churchyard. She tried to restore her bleeding cycle, end the pregnancy. I didn't want to help her, so she helped herself. To the medicine I use with other women. It was an accident. God knows it was. Even if the church thinks differently. One last thing. About Lucky. Do you think he blames the Baron for Beate's death? In a sense, I believe all of us who loved her do. I wish you could have known her, Andreas. She was a bright soul. But that's not what you're asking me, is it? You want to know if my husband killed your friend. We hardly knew each other. Be that as it may, my husband is not a murderer. I didn't think he was. But I'll leave you in peace. Be well, Agnes. You as well. Oh, she's pissed. Fair enough, I would be too. If someone came around accusing my husband of murder. Hello, Ulrich. Bless you, Andreas. Hi, Gret. Andreas, such a pleasure to see you, and looking so handsome as always. Back for more of my rye? Dear Gret, you know I can't stay away from your rye. Andreas! You're a good man. Always welcome to my rye. Well, I thought we were supposed to have lunch with them. Oh, wait, we said later. Right. I think I need to find Otto. Where might I find Otto? Johann, Eddie, Veronica. Otto, I need your help. Nope, nope. There we go. I'm working on it. Buttons are hard. Okay. Otto. Zimmerman, town carpenter. Okay. Comments, blacksmith. Mill. Salt mine. Is it Hans Zimmerman? Wait, Otto Zimmerman. It is Otto Zimmerman. Okay. In the town commons. Oh, okay. Afternoon, Andreas. Heard that Baron friend of yours was killed up at the Abbey. My mentor, Brother Piero, has been blamed for the crime. One of the elder brothers, isn't he? I met him while I was replacing the scriptorium roof. Seemed an alright sort, for a monk. Sorry to hear it. Anyway, did you need something? Otherwise I've got things to do. You think you could help me dig up a grave at the Abbey? Why? You think there's something in there that'll prove the old brother's innocent, right? That's it. You're perceptive, Otto. I only listen when people talk. You should try it. Damn. Did you talk to the abbot about this mischief? Wouldn't want to get my grubby hands all over his stuff without permission. Actually, he expressly forbade it. Huh? And you still want me to do it? Sure, why not? It'll take a few hours, though, especially if I'm digging alone. You don't care that the abbot said we shouldn't? What do I give a shit if he gets mad? He's an asshole. Did you want me to do this now or not? Yeah. Fine, I'll grab my tools. Shit. So, town carpenter, what's that like? Exhausting, not unlike this here. And satisfying, too, to make things with my hands, to feel the sun on my neck and sap under my fingers. And I haven't fallen off a roof yet, so all in all, I can't complain. Fair enough. Being the only carpenter in Tassing must keep you busy. Busy's one word for it. Overworked's another. It was easier my dad and I could do it together, but since his stroke, it is what it is. But I like being a carpenter. It's necessary work, keeps me talking to everyone in town and aware of what's troubling them. Many people in Tassing are struggling, Andreas. The peasants, especially. I heard as much from Clara. They used to be able to pay a portion of their taxes and crops, but the abbot put an end to that. Now they get a bad price from Miller, they don't have enough to pay the abbey. That's exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about. The abbot might own the land, but he doesn't work it. He just reaps the benefits of others' efforts. But it's not just him. The law. Imperial law. That's what gives him the power. So maybe the laws have to change. I had no idea it was so bad. My family are all artists. You're from Nuremberg, right? Well away from the peasants' problems. I'd be surprised if you did know. Good thing you came to Tassing. You can get a real education in how the world works. Anyway, I should get back to digging. It's going to take a while. This is all on my own. Why don't you take a look around? Okay. Oh, Father Matthias is here. With a wooden headstone, too. Things must be worse for the Abbey than I thought. The Abbey must be having money troubles. That would explain why the Abbot's wringing the peasants dry. The rest of the Abbots are in the crypt or under the church. Took a look at them while inspecting the foundations with Endress. Kirsau's built on top of an old Roman fort. Not cheap to maintain by any means. Surely they can do better than a wooden gravestone. Take it up with the abbot if it bothers you so much. Me, I think they should all get wood. I respect Otto. Brother Jacob from Cologne. Did you ever meet him? We spoke a couple times. He was a funny man, just about the only one of these monks with a sense of humor. Funny monk. Sad to have missed him. Some of them aren't so bad. Piero especially knows how to lie. Yeah, if you say so. Jacob had a gift for manipulating his features and his voice to imitate the other monks. A man like that is wasted at an abbey. Mother Brunhild. Abbotissa? I doubt anyone's in that one. Given the age, I'd guess she's long been moved to the abbey crypt by now. You worried Father Garano might try to punish us for this? God willing, we'll be done before he finds out about it. So you want me to speed it up? Sure, what do you care about my back? Christ. That's not quite what we were saying. Oh! Short, angry monk coming this way. Ah, hell, we're destined for an earful. Matthew's not gonna like this. Could hide, but then I'd be putting Otto in a tough spot. Not gonna be happy with me if he has to deal with Matthew on his own. This could be the clue that unlocks the truth about who killed Lawrence. What if it's what's a little trouble if it saves an innocent man's life? We're destined for an earful. I'm not gonna abandon Otto. Is all well here? Why would it not be? Why have you coerced the carpenter into digging up the late Brother Gerhard? Someone has disturbed this grave, and I suspect it's connected with the Baron's murder. Honesty. That is curious, if you're telling the truth. Even so, Brother Gerhard's grave is not your concern. You are not a member of this community, Andreas. Yep, it gave his permission. The rest is not your business. As a circuiter, it is my duty to prevent from mischief such as this. Oh. I'm gonna slight blackmail. Because I don't want to lie more. Like the mischief you and Rudiger get up to in the library. Whatever this is about, leave me out of it. It's nothing. Andreas is just being cruel. A little bit. Well, Brother Matthew, may we continue our work? Finish quickly and clean up when you are done. Oh! Good thing we caught him fucking. Ahaha. Sister Maria, the librarian. Probably before your time. I was a boy when she passed. My father spoke well of her, though. Said she reminded him of his own grandmother, a sweet woman who loved the Lord. I expect the abbot will have her dug up soon. Ah, for the crypt. A ghoulish tradition, I've always thought. What's dead should remain buried. Then, they don't have much space here, and many of the monks aren't long for death themselves, so... True. Well, I've reached the body, but... What? Is something wrong with it? Looks fine. Fine enough, decay notwithstanding, but someone stuffed a sack up under his ribs. Good God. Let me see. Ooh. What a strange collection of objects. Strange how? Two are plated with precious metals and engraved, a silver-chased rod and a golden plate. The rod has symbols of the zodiac on it. The plate has some script I don't recognize. And a knife. Seems ordinary enough, but together with the other two buried here. Why would someone bury them here together? Because they're forbidden. Wait, there's blood in some of the symbols on this rod. Dried to be certain, but not that old. Ferenc tried cleaning this, but wasn't able to remove all of the blood. Could this be what was used to kill Lawrence? Who buried this here anyway? I can't say, but it may be connected to the Baron's murder. What? None of this makes any sense. What's going on here, Andreas? That's what I need to figure out, Otto. Thank you for your help. Thanks, Otto. Found a number of magical items. Must have been message for a fellow magician to dig up at a later date. Okay. I'm gonna leave Matilda out of it. I am, however, going to go see if I can talk to Alban. What's up? God bless you, Andreas. Time to eat with me and some of the townspeople. Of course, I'll talk to Gret and see who she wants to come along. Where should we meet you? At the shrine to St. Moritz. We'll see you there. Until then. Oh my. Andreas. Yes? Are these all of the mothers from Tassing and their children? Well, no, I don't think it's all of them. Helena, Pfeifferin couldn't make it. It's a long walk up here in her condition. And Hetty said that Hans was too big for stories. Stories? I may have said something about your books. I like stories. Yes, maybe a little too much. Alright, I can tell a story, but first let us pray together and eat. Oh Lord, thank you for bringing us together as you brought Jesus to the disciples on the road to Emmaus. With the breaking of bread between us, let us recognize each other as Christians and resource of salvation through you. Amen. Amen, 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 amen. And I thank you and your husband for this bread, Gret. My Ulrich always said that bread brings people together. I missed this when I was in Flanders. Bread. You don't have bread in Flanders? Right. Where's Flanders? North, down by the sea. It's where the Mueller's windmill came from. It's true. They have whole fields of them where the land is flat. I want to see them. Father Gerno eats a white bread, does he not? Yes, the finest wheat is used for the abbot's bread. Why? The abbot is a very important man, Paul. We have a bread in my home that we call inhera. We make it thin, round, and wide, and we put our food on top of it. We eat it with almost every meal. As you love the bread of your home, so I miss mine. Almonds. Oh, what's the recipe? Maybe we could make it. Thank you, but no. We use a fine grain that does not grow here, called teff. Maybe we find our local bread satisfying, Brother Savant. I do enjoy it, perhaps too much. I'm becoming too accustomed to life in Rome, even life in these mountains. Truth, I can no longer remember the taste of inhera, not even the feeling of it in my mouth. It is the great danger that comes with the blessing of travel, living a life between worlds. James. I don't want to talk about bread anymore. It's so boring. Bah. Don't be rude, Bert. I did say I would tell a story. Children, have you ever seen a Bible? Father Tom. Yeah, Father Thomas has one. It's huge. My dad has one. It was printed in Bamberg. Very good. This is a Bible from my home that I brought to give to the abbot. Andreas, do you have a favorite Bible story? Favorite story to illustrate from the Bible? Elijah and the chariots of fire. Yes, the spectacle of a prophet carried bodily into heaven. It's always a wonder to see how different artists illustrate it. Now then, children, do you know the story of Jesus feeding the multitudes? Fish and loaves. My mom and dad make loaves. This is from our Bible, how we tell the story of how Jesus fed thousands from only a few fish and a few loaves of bread. Oh my god, please. I'm not answering that question. I know testing seems big to you, but the world is so much bigger than we can imagine. There are many people of many different colors all over the world. There are places where no one looks like you or me. Really? It's true. In Flanders, I saw ships arrive from the New World. The people look and dress very differently from us, differently from Brother Sabat. They make art out of gold that is so beautiful it outshines the greatest works of the Christian world. Okay, Bertold. There! Came up when I was visiting the Druckers. I'm sorry, Marie. There's nothing to apologize for. We can't shield them from the world forever. I do not know him, Bert, but do you know the story of Lazarus? No? He was a friend of Jesus. He became sick and he died. But Jesus brought his followers to Lazarus' tomb. He prayed to God, and when they opened the tomb, Lazarus emerged, returned from the dead. Jesus can bring people back from the dead? He can, Bert. One day Jesus will bring us all back from the dead. Everyone who has ever lived and died will come together and be resurrected on Judgment Day. I got my hat stolen. Oh, she's so cute. Look at her. She's so cutie. Even the Romans? Yes, the Romans too. Why did you ask about the Romans? I saw one come out of their tomb, like Lazarus. What do you mean, Paul? Well, the ruins below the mill. They're Roman, and they all died a long time ago. I saw one come out the other night. They were in white, like Lazarus. Let's stop telling stories, Paul. You shouldn't have been outside at night. Andreas, what does he mean? I think I may have seen something similar the other evening. What? Really? Where? Same place, by the Roman ruins. Maybe Paul did see a spirit of some kind. Very dire omen, if that is what he saw. I will pray on this. Apologies for that, ladies, but thank you for sharing a meal with me today. I will be leaving for Rome soon, but I am glad to have spent some time with you and your children. Thank you, Brother Savat. It was wonderful. Don't forget to stop by the bakery before you go. I'm sure my husband will want to see you before you go. I will. God grant you all health. Oh shit. Okay, we're fucked. Need to go to the chapter house to meet with the Archdeacon. Oh shit, there's a lot of people. Hey Ulrich, sup homie? Please state your name for our records. Andreas, son of Joseph Mahler, master artist from Nuremberg. What is an artist doing in Kirsau Abbey? The Abbey still has some commissions from wealthy patrons, and I need the money before I return to Nuremberg. Arnold, please write that down. I think we're ready to begin. Of course, Your Reverence. Now then, Master Mahler, what was your relation to Lorenz, the Baron Rothvogel? Incidental acquaintances, nothing more. Would it be fair to say that you did not feel you knew him well? I had some sense of him as a person. How would you characterize him? A nobleman, for all of the good and ill that goes along with that title. You have a problem with nobility, Master Mahler. Of course not, Your Reverence, but even noblemen may be tempted to abuse their power. I understand your meaning, yes. Do you know of anyone who had a reason to harm the Baron? Oh, fuck. I can think of a few people, Your Reverence. Good. Might help us solve this problem that faces us. The Baron Rothvogel was murdered here, in this very room. Someone did it. Father Gano believes it was one of his monks, Brother Piero. I met with Brother Piero and questioned him at length. While it seems unlikely that a man of his age and temperament could murder the Baron, he was discovered in flagrante delicto. Corpus locally, body of the crime, sometimes literal, often figurative. Well, that must be proven. Emblazing offense. Okay. Technically, he discovered the corpus delicti, but was not caught in flagrante delicto. Oh, shit. Master Mahler, I'm not interested in your clarifications, technical or otherwise, on matters of Latin or law. If you wish to advocate on behalf of Brother Piero, I suggest shutting your mouth until I ask you a question. Piero had reasons to resent the Baron, the loss of his work, the insistence on discussing the writings of the troublemaker from Wittenberg. And as for his age and infirmity, I myself have read of many cases in which a man of modest strength succumbs to the temptations of the devil. Once seized by a devilish fever, the poor sinner gains an infernal power that allows him to inflict grievous wounds, sometimes fatal. What I am saying is that in spite of this curious circumstances, Brother Piero is the most plausible perpetrator in this most vile act. I understand that you are on friendly terms with Brother Piero. You also interacted with the Baron both in the town and the Abbey. Did you witness anything that suggests anyone else could have murdered Baron Rothvogel? The Abbey's prior Farring was behaving suspiciously. Yes. That is an extraordinary claim, Andreas. The abbot speaks highly of the prior, and he oversees both your and Brother Piero's work, does he not? Yes, but Prior Farring's role in the scriptorium had little bearing on his motive. An extraordinary claim requires extraordinary evidence for me to take it seriously. Why should I take the word of an artist over a respected officer of this abbey? I can provide evidence of Prior Farring's motive. Please do so. Baron Rothvogel and Prior Farring were exchanging letters about performing a magical ritual during the Baron's visit. You have proof of this? I have an imprint of a letter that the Prior wrote to the Baron. Ooh! Oh, apparently this is immaterial gossip. In it, the prior mentions that he will not perform a ritual for the Baron, even if the Baron does follow through on a threat to implicate him to Inquisitors in Innsbruck. An implication of necromancy is a serious matter. The prior's position would have been in peril, possibly even his life. And how do you believe Prior Ferenc would have killed the Baron? I pray you will not say it was a magical ritual. Found a silver rod that belongs to Prior Ferenc. It has dried blood on it. A silver rod? Likely a magical tool of some sort, but it is of a size and weight appropriate for the head wound that the Baron received. How did you come to possess this item? One of Prior Ferenc's concerned brethren delivered it to my keeping. I would prefer to keep his name out of the records. Highly unusual, Master Mailer, but I will heed your request. Is there anything else to say about the Prior? No, Your Reverence. Very well. Who else may have wanted to see the Baron dead? A local thief, Martin Bauer. Yes, his name has come up in my inquiries. My understanding is that he absconded with some of the Baron's valuables. Arnold? Yes, Your Reverence. A silver ring, a gold ring, 12 golden, 10 groschen, and a book intended as a gift for the Abbey. Thank you. It is my understanding that this boy was known as a thief, but also as a coward. And that theft was from the Abbey's guest house after the Baron had already left it. Very well, Your Reverence. I am not treating him as a serious suspect for the Baron's murder at this time. Who else may have wanted to see the Baron dead? I can think of no one else. I'm not going to throw either of them under the bus. Very well. Are you aware of anything else that might shed some light on this case? Has Brother Florian told you about the note he found on the Baron's clothing? Yes, Brother Florian explained how he came to find it and told me its contents. Master Edeljäger has entered his testimony in our register. I don't understand the implications. Who is the innocent? Another mystery, it seems. Do you believe the murderer wrote it? Whoever wrote it was a talented scribe. I understand that Kirsau has two, the elderly brother Adok and the younger brother Guy. To be frank, Your Reverence, neither man has the skill to write in this way. There's something else about it too. The style's just different. It's unlike Adok and Guy's writing, unlike mine. Something about the way the first and second strokes meet on the A and G. Yes, well, whatever the particulars, it seems it will remain a mystery that stands apart from the commission of the murder. Unfortunately, there's more to tell. I found more notes. I'm gonna notes written in the same hand on the same type of parchment to those who had a motive to kill the Baron. That is deeply troubling, but again, beyond the bounds of my investigation. In any case, I thank you for bringing it to my attention. Of course, Your Reverence. Until next time. Until then. Ooh, final day of Law and Judgment. Andreas, I didn't think you were coming to this. I didn't think I was either. I suppose I wanted to see how this ends after all. He was the prior of the Abbey, if you can believe it. Did you ever talk with him in the Abbey, Andreas? Oh, I got him executed. Ooh. You missed the trial, Andreas. That archdeacon read all of the charges and found him guilty. I worked with him almost every day, Clara. I didn't know he had murder in him. Oh, they want you to think they're so pious, but all they do here is slowly drain the life out of this town. Calm down, Peter. Oh, here comes the procession. Did I miss anything? No, you're fine. Andreas. Otto. Oh shit. I bet it was Father Gartner. I ordered the executioner to carry out his duty. I warrant him peace and safe conduct, whatever may befall him. Look away. I have executed as judgment and law have required. For that I thank God and my master who has taught me such an art. Taught me such art. Shit. I know this was your doing, Andreas. Take it up with the Archdeacon. It has nothing to do with me. The Archdeacon wouldn't have reached his verdict without your testimony. I read it. I didn't say anything that wasn't true. You are no longer welcome at Kirsau, Andreas Mailer. I will send your final payment to the Gärtners. May you have a long and successful career in Nuremberg, and may you never travel this way again. Fair enough. Ending Act 1 out of the abbot's favor, fair enough. Andreas, has the time come for you to leave us? I'm afraid so, Brother Piero. This farewell will have to be brief. Father Gärtner made it clear I was no longer welcome at Kirsau. I pray that time will soften Father Abbott's heart. I hope he eventually realizes you were only trying to help me. This is a sad parting, but inevitable. I had hoped you would stay a bit longer. But the world needs you more than Kirsau does. You have grown beyond this old abbey and become a master in your own right. I will miss you, my son. As I will you. Come, your masterpiece is complete. May I see it one last time before you go? Please, I value your assessment. The opinion of one old monk matters little. All the same, I am excited to see it finished at last. It is a masterpiece, truly worthy of the word. And it appears you took my advice to heart. What advice was that? To put yourself in the work. Not just to interpret another artist's work, but to transform it into something true. This shows the world as it is, as you have seen it, even if it is not what we may want to see. Though it is not my place to say so, I am proud of you, Andreas. Cute. What's this? A scrap of parchment? Do not return here. A warning? Whose hand is this? It doesn't look like Brother Adok's or Brother Guy's. Brother Florian and I found a similar note in the Baron's clothing. And I found more notes delivered to others while I was investigating. They must have been written by someone who knew the darkest secrets of the town and this abbey. They tugged at those secrets to kill the Baron, like someone pulling at threads that had been buried in the past. A frightening thought, but who would do such a thing? Brother Gerno. God knows. He does, and I hope his love can still the wickedness in the heart of whoever wrote this. Do not trouble yourself overly about it. Your future lies outside of these walls. I hope that you will have time to visit me once or twice in your travels before the Lord takes me. I'll come as often as I can. Assuming Brother Gerno doesn't forbid it. We must have faith that better days lie ahead for all of us. God bless you, Andreas Mailer. Thank you for your guidance. Guidance. Until later. Finished Act 1. Who the fuck is this? Who the fuck is this? Oh! Are you alright, Master Andreas? What? Are you alright, Master Andreas? Yes, thank you. I was just remembering him. Trying to, anyway. Doesn't come easily anymore. Oh, would you like me to leave you alone? No, Casper. It is not necessary. There's nothing to be done about it now. It's too late. Like so many things. Andreas Mailer, I never expected to see your face here again. Have you been in Nuremberg for these last 7 years? No, Nuremberg for a few years, but I received some lucrative commissions abroad. Ooh! Poland. Knows some Polish, bits of Czech and Hungarian, and can reference cultural touchstones from Krakow, Prague, and Buda. Some English and can reference cultural touchstones from London and other parts of Britain. French and Spanish and bits of Arabic and reference cultural touchstones from Barcelona and Valencia to Aragon. Or do I want Poland? I don't want Polish, actually. Let's do Poland. I was in Krakow, the court of King Sigismund. He has a great passion for humanism as well as New Italian and German art. Did you have occasion to paint the king's physician, Jacob Isaac? Not to paint, but I did meet him. I was surprised to learn King Sigismund had ennobled him. An interesting man. You don't meet many Jews in nobility, in Poland or elsewhere. Poland is one of the few places Jews may live in peace. Provided the king doesn't have a change of heart. I'm surprised you care at all. Oh! In spite of your extensive travels and success, you're still not welcome at Curacao. The abbot hasn't forgotten what happened. 7 years isn't all that long. I simply wanted to pay my respects to an old friend. Surely you understand that. I understand why Father Abbot expelled you from the abbey. What were you expecting? A hero's welcome? It's fine. Tell Father Gerno I'll be staying at the land house in town for a night or two before moving on. The Golden Hand. I'll tell him, but I can't imagine he'll care. Why is he so rude? God bless you. Now be off. Ooh, revolution. I did not realize there was more than one act. That monk seemed unhappy to see you, Master Andreas. Why is the abbot so angry with you? Toward the end of my stay in Tassing, there was a murder at Kierso Abbey. A nobleman. Father Garno panicked and accused my friend, Brother Piero, of committing the crime. I helped convince the investigating archdeacon that another monk was responsible, Prior Ferenc. He was executed for the crime. You got someone killed? No, I collected evidence and presented it truthfully. The archdeacon is the one who made the ruling. Oh, you couldn't let your friend die. Why didn't you mention it before? Well, I suppose it must have been a hard situation about if the abbot is still this mad at you. I had to make some difficult choices. Maybe they were the wrong ones. I've had to live with that. Why did we come here if you're not welcome? I wanted to pay my respects to Brother Piero. And to be honest, I'm not looking forward to returning to Nuremberg. This commission, it's an obscene vanity piece under the pretext of a religious scene. My patrons just want to celebrate themselves and their wealth. I dread each new commission more than the last. Every step I take toward home is agonizing. But, Master, you're famous and rich. Your work is wonderful. When I saw your altarpiece in Nuremberg, I begged my father to help me become your apprentice. I don't understand how you could accomplish all that you have and be unhappy. Not the loud-ass car, what the fuck? Thought I wanted to be like my father, like my brothers. I thought that was my dream. Once, I wanted this life so much that it consumed my every waking thought. I don't know if I've changed or what I wanted was never really real. Maybe I've been a fool this entire time, or this whole time. I want life as an artist to be better for you, Casper. Learn from my mistakes, alright? Alright. Yes, Master Andreas. I shouldn't be burdening you with such dark thoughts, Casper. Come, let's visit my old friend Klaus. It's been too long. As you like, Master Andreas. I'm still gonna end it here. I finished out the last time, or the first act, and so what we're gonna do is be done here. And we'll start Act 2 next time. Fuck yeah, maybe next week, actually. Hell yeah. Brother Ferenc's dead. Prior Ferenc's dead. Rip. This should be interesting. I honestly did not think that there was more. I'm intrigued. I'm very intrigued. Excuse me. Oh my goodness. Clearly, I need to get some more sleep. But yeah, a short stream today. Again, 2 days of short streams, but AI Somnium will be longer per usual on Sunday. So yeah, thanks so much for hanging out. I hope you have a great rest of your day, night, morning, evening, whatever time zone you may be in. I hope it's a fantastic one, and I hope to see you next time. Farewell.